afternoon and welcome to the Lunchtime Series with me, Kevin Britz, leading the charge with insights, information, and ultimately effective results. Joining me in today's leadership and coaching segment, as colleagues and best friends at the Academy of Motive Action, they co-created the CARES approach, which we'll speak about later in the show. They work with high-stress professionals, first responders, and leadership teams to build the kind of emotional resilience and presence that can withstand real-world pressure. Their contrasting backgrounds in education, communication, resilience, business ownership, and operations bring a layered real-world lens to leadership that is professional and entrepreneurs that might find both practical and relatable. Please welcome to the show Jen Hardy and Irina Alexander from the Academy of Motive Action. Hello, ladies. How are you doing?
Fabulous. How are you?
Good. Thank you for being here.
We're excited. Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. So, just to kick it off, let's start with your personal stories. What led each of you to step away from your previous roles into the work you're doing now? And Irina, I know that it's around burnout and business fatigue. And Jen, for you, it's an imposter syndrome, corporate life. But I'm going to give you both time. So tell us about those personal stories.
Absolutely. I, as you mentioned, went through a burnout. I had a business in a highly male-dominated industry in construction, and I built it pretty fast, reached a certain level of success, and everybody saw it as very successful. Outside picture was perfect. Mom, wife, successful business, leader in a business community. And so while achieving it, that's what I thought is success. But I didn't experience any joy and I didn't see a purpose. And it was just exhausting every day to wake up and not feeling happy. And it's like, well, those things, all the things supposed to make me happy, that's what everybody said, like nice house and nice clothes. And none of that made me happy. And so it was tough. And one day I just realized it was enough. And that's what shifted my perspective. And unfortunately, like I said, it wasn't pretty transition. It was a full, I am done. I no longer want to do that. I want out at any cost. And that what led me to first invest in myself to do a personal development and later on help others to take similar path.
Yeah, as you're speaking, Irina, I think a lot of people go through this, and one of the sentiments that come to mind is Anthony Robbins refers to it as a violation of your identity. Until something is violated to that degree, do we kind of go, not often, but sometimes it takes that violation to kind of go, I'm just not happy. And suddenly something happens, and and that's what it takes, and you make that shift, and something just absolutely shifts for you. And Jen, what was your perspective from this?
Yeah, so part of the reason that our partnership makes so much sense and really resonates with people is because I'm on a completely different side of the spectrum. While I did experience burnout I'm a former educator, varsity soccer coach, girls athletic coordinator for 12 years. And I did experience burnout, but burnout's not what had me leave. I did find skills and tools and things to kind of work me back into, we'll call it some energy and some passion. But I actually ended up going through a really bad breakup, and going through that really bad breakup, feeling like I must be the problem. I'm broken. I'm bad. And that led me into self-development training, where I actually went into someone having to reflect back to me. Landmark was my first one that I went into. And through that is where I started to learn some of the imposter syndrome, right? Like how many years I had been over functioning and over performing for a part of me that needed to be valued, that needed to be seen as important. And the only way I knew how to do that was to be valuable, right? I was literally taught, be so valuable that they can't let you go. They can't ignore you. It's not bad advice. And if you consider some of your childhood stories, it could do what it did for me, right? And kick that part of me into overdrive to just what I call yes syndrome, right? Just saying yes to everything all the time. And so I started to realize how much my value was completely tied up into what I was doing. And the funny part about it was I never wanted to be a teacher and a coach. I didn't go to school to be a teacher and a coach. It just kind of happened. That's an even longer story, but I ended up being really good at it. We won a state championship in only 5 years as a head coach and 5 years as a brand new school. And down the road, I realized okay, I'm good at what I'm doing, but this is something I wound up doing. So what else can I do? Who am I really? What do I care about? And the joke of life is that I left teaching and coaching, and it turns out I'm a teacher and a coach, just not in public education the way it was.
I love that. And it's as from my interpretation of that is it has to resonate somehow. And you may find yourself in a way, and Irina, even you alert to this, like you think you're supposed to be happy, like you're doing all the things, you've got all the things, it's all showing up in like, and you're like, but why am I unhappy? But I mean, I love, I mean, the name of your business as well, Motive Action. Is that the Academy of Motive Action? Tell us about that, because I think from, just hearing a bits of your story now, it's like, okay, maybe there's a connection there. And tell us, how did you get to that name?
I wish it would be a sexy story, which where we sit down and we brainstormed and we came up with this fantastic name, but that is not true. Company started in 2020. And back then I was inspired to create a journal, action journal that I was selling on Amazon. And I was trying to come up with a company name. And all I did is I put it on the Facebook and say, hey people, what do you think? What is a good name? And if I choose your name, you'll get a free journal. And one of the gentlemen, I don't even remember, maybe one day I just need to go back to the old post and see who it was, just said Motive Action, and it resonated, and the company stood, and here it is, Motive Action, motivation and action. It very resonates because we don't believe in just motivating people because it's not sustainable. A lot of times we go to events and we get all hyped up and motivated, but motivation without action is not going to bring you results that everybody looking for. So those are two very powerful words that we created as one word.
Yeah, and what I find is like when I read it, I was like, that's it's almost like motivation, but it's just a little bit better. All right, so
I love it.
So one of the things that part of what you guys deal with around in leadership specifically is you both work closely with high stress professionals and first responders. But I mean, what have you learned about the roles of awareness in preventing burnout and disengagement? Because I think, as you guys have mentioned, there's something that happens and you kind of like there's no joy. And I made a note, Irina, you used the word joy. There's not joy that you're finding in what you're doing. And long-term symptomatic kind of going through the motions, you eventually just burn out and you're like, I'm just not happy. And you don't get out of bed and all these things happen. And I think joy, like not having the joy of what you're doing, is a good kind of wake-up call perhaps, right? But I mean, from your perspective, tell us about, what you've learned about the roles of around awareness, preventing burnout and disengagement.
Absolutely. So to me and to us, awareness is the first step. A lot of times day to day, we run on autopilot. Sometimes we drive home and we don't even remember how we got home because we are just on autopilot in our thoughts. So awareness is the first step that interrupts that autopilot. And it's not, as a leaders, as a business owners, it's not that we just don't care, but we are so focused, a lot of times even in survival mode, that's what drives us. So autopilot prevention, interruption. So awareness gives us a pause to figure out, okay, what's happening? What am I feeling? What am I seeing and not seeing? And that's where the CARES approach, and that's what we do, comes in place. Awareness is the very first step. It's a highly important step, is the internal check-in, because if you can't regulate yourself, you cannot properly communicate and you cannot properly lead your team, lead your family, lead even yourself to where you want to go. So awareness, some people say it's a soft skill, but for us, it's very, very strategic.
When I hear that guests have frameworks, I get excited because what we know about the human brain is we love a strategy and we love a structure, right? So when there's some kind of structure in place, you're like, okay, cool. I can apply the structure and it's almost doable. It's quicker and easier to connect my brain around than just like, you've got to do the stuff. Tell us about the CARES framework.
Absolutely. First of all, we consider it tactical, practical, applicable neuroscience-based framework, which is helping these high-stress professionals build, again, that self-awareness, the emotional regulation, the communication skills. And what we feel is important is, especially working with first responders, right? No fluff, but also a piece that gets missed a lot, without the shame, right? Figuring out how to let go of the shame of it's okay to slow down. I don't have to do everything. And without all the overwhelm, right? So with real tools they can walk away and use. So CARES actually stands for communication, awareness, resilience, emotional literacy, and self-mastery. And it's really it's a framework that's intended to help bridge gaps, right? Bridge the gap between professional communication interactions that are happening on the job with employees from person to person, but also effective communication in your personal relationships, in your peer interactions, in your leadership roles. So it's not intended to be just this linear process. It's this loop we're moving through in real time. To give it a little bit more depth, communication, right? How are you speaking to yourself? How are you speaking to those around you? How are you received? When it's good, when it's bad, when it's right, when it's wrong, when it's messy. And then the awareness, what's happening beneath the surface, like Irina already mentioned. Are you aware of the thoughts you're thinking, the beliefs you're coming from, what you're making things mean in the moment with your team, within the room? The resiliency, right? Do you have the capacity to maintain your own, like to navigate yourself in those moments so you can return to center, stay grounded, and actually achieve what's intended in the moment and show up as who you say you are, right? And then emotional literacy. And we like saying literacy. We borrowed that from Brene Brown. Emotional intelligence is thrown out all over the place. But for us, emotional literacy is, do you even understand what you're experiencing? Do you even know what you're actually feeling? Because we mislabel emotions so often. So many people will jump straight to anger because they're actually hurt. And the idea of feeling hurt is so yucky that they're like, nah, just go straight to mad, right? And how is that hijacking you in the moment? And then lastly is self-mastery, being able to lead yourself, right? So others can trust your leadership.
Yeah. So, Jen, you use the word shame. Like when you started off, a lot of people, they tend to not want to show up, for themselves or show up in an environment because we are shamed and I don't know where it comes from. I don't know like, if the world has taught us, that shame is something you have to endure based on, like for you to succeed because else, you seem difficult but I mean, from your perspectives, why do you think shame is such an important part of understanding how to move past and be better at self?
I'll start. Irina already kind of mentioned it, and we talk about it a lot, right? The hustle culture. You said we live in a world that says do more, do more, do more. And so when it's looked at as a badge of honor, right? That you've done all of these things and you keep doing more and you're always available and all of those things. The idea of doing less and still being successful, or the idea of slowing down and resting while others are just working and going and going. There's this innate experience of shame because other people have it worse, or other people are doing more, or other people have it harder. And it's like, it doesn't have to be that way though. Not everybody wants to work at 110% speed, and not everybody needs to. But there's just this autopilot that happens of that shame and that guilt of I'm not supposed to do that. We're supposed to work hard. It's supposed to be hard. We're supposed to have to overcome. Irina and I've talked about this so many times. Like, God, can we please shift this belief? Like, why does it have to be hard? Why do we have to have like these stories of overcoming? And we do need resilience and we do need opportunities and barriers, but that shame of being able to slow down, like that just needs to be a more open and consistent conversation. That's okay. Something we can normalize.
Yeah, I love the way that you use normalize, because I think when we do push back or we feel like we're not coping, we tend to think, but then I feel guilty because I might be shamed about it because I'm not coping. And that's not factually true. It's like sometimes you just can't cope, or you're not okay, and it's okay to not be okay. But Irina, tell us. I like the sentiment around emotional literacy. I think and it's true. People, so like I have the sentiment where people, we know about empathy, but it's almost like, no, we got to empathize. Like it's almost like people dismiss it as something they've already heard, and you kind of, but it's like, do you actually know what that means? Do you know? And I like the word literacy because then you kind of go, well, have you sat with that and understood what empathy looks like and acts like and sounds like and the position you hold? And you really start tapping into what does it mean to be emotionally capable of unpacking empathy, right? So tell us more about your position of like emotional literacy, because I think it's a significant entry point that people sometimes miss.
Interestingly that you asked me, because that's the one I think in my journey I struggled the most. Because as a business owner who is wearing a mask and pretending like everything is okay and not allowing yourself to feel, because right now is not the time. I have to push through. I have to hustle, right? It was all pushed down for later, sometime later, until it become too late. And then I didn't even have a vocabulary to know what I feel. So it's like, I'm mad, I'm angry, I'm happy. What else is out there? And we have in our trainings, we provide a wheel of emotions. I think it has probably 100 emotions or more. And it was fascinating to learn to listen to yourself, because our mind has a tendency to create stories, and it's either focusing on the past or the future. Very rarely we are in here and now. And our body is the main source of telling what's happening now if we were to focus and to listen. And we also know that emotions live throughout the body and all of that. So being able to slow down, to pause, to check with yourself. Where is it happening? What am I feeling? And is it really guilt? Is it really shame? Or is it the hurt? Or is it avoidance of something? And a lot of times even fear of feeling and fear of being perceived as not good enough, because the culture of business ownership and everything is fine. You put a lot of unrealistic expectations on yourself because you have that perception of how you're supposed to look and how you want others to perceive you. But it's also not sustainable. And so all of that combines into suppression of emotions. And then you're like, okay, now it's like Jen likes to say, one big meatball or onion with a bunch of layers. And you have to slowly start peeling it off and realizing, what am I actually feeling? Where am I feeling it? Where it's coming from, and also being able to process emotion, because just naming it, right? It's the first step. It's realizing what it is, but then allowing yourself to feel versus pushing it down and saying, now it's not the time.
Yeah, and I think you guys have touched so much on part of the feeling part of this, and there's a self-awareness and understanding that. And I think it's probably more relevant and more in our faces today than ever before, that we're actually feeling beings rather than just humans. There's an absolute emotion that we're experiencing at every degree. From just my experience, it's not like and I'm a lot older than I think you guys are, but from my perspective, it's not like your parents sat down and asked, well, what is it that you're feeling? Like, you were just like, you're making a noise, move out the way, like go and play outside or something, so it was like a dismissal of being and allowed to be something that you're experiencing. So you didn't even have an opportunity to understand what the emotion was. And I think now it's really pushing the agenda. There's a lot of people like really kind of going, well, do you know what that is? And I can't think of the name of the book now. It's Brené Brown's book about emotions. I'm sure you guys know what I'm talking about.
Atlas of Hearts.
That one is the one I'm talking about. And that, that really unpacks emotion to that degree. And like you were saying, not even knowing what the feelings are. And now that you have like this wheel to kind of go, well, I often speak around biases. And until you know that you have more than over 200 biases that you're dealing with, you kind of like, really? There's like more than that? And people are surprised that we have so many biases. It's like, well, that's because humans are complex. We're not as simple as we think we are, right? But I mean, moving on to a big topic that a lot of people struggle with is imposter syndrome. So once someone becomes aware of what's holding them back, really tapping into their emotional literacy, their self-mastery, understanding how we start the awareness and starting to communicate with ourselves. What are the first steps that you guys suggest that we start taking to understand stress and imposter syndrome, our fatigue? What are some of those steps that we need to move out of where we're stuck?
Well, I mean, we mentioned the awareness already, right? Getting the awareness, which you have, but then coming back to the shame conversation, right? Like practicing the awareness without the self-criticism, the grace of it's okay to experience this. And we like to define grace differently, which is we live in a world where everything is either or, right? A very dichotomous situation where it's got to be right, or it's got to be wrong, or it's got to be good, or it's got to be bad, or it's got to be black, or it's got to be white. And we want to reframe that there's a gray area. And if you can live in the gray area, which is for us, is does this work for me right now? Instead of is it right, wrong, good, bad, does it work? And it creates a lot of peace and it creates a lot more space for there to be action versus just reaction, an opportunity to pause for a moment because you're giving yourself the space to consider. It's not bad that I feel this way, or it's not good that I'm thinking this, or bad that I'm thinking this. It's just what is. And it's also not who I am. So where is this coming from? And how can I work within this and start moving through it? So it's small shifts. Transformation is not an end game, right? It's like mastery is not, you will reach the end and you will know all things. It's knowing that it is a continuous journey. I mean, Irina and I both have a lot of skills and a lot of tools, and we have to use them daily. Heck, we have to use them weekly with each other to keep it going. I mean, it is an ongoing practice. And so we want people to know it's not something you're going to be able to, we'll use the word fix or overcome overnight. And it can be massive and quickly as well. It's just taking those small steps forward. Irina, do you want to add anything to that?
What comes to mind is the physical fitness, and think about it as a mental fitness, right? You don't go to the gym once and here I'm healed and I'm healthy and I'm strong. It's a lifestyle. It's a daily practice. And the same is with what we do. We're building mental muscle. We're building it's our lifestyle, how we live, and we practice it every day. So if you stop and if you go into different environment, that will affect your performance. The same way with the fitness. If you stop, if you start eating a lot of junk food, and if you stop moving, that's gonna show up in your body and how you feel. So I just want people to think it's not a pill, a magic pill, and all of a sudden you're healed. It's a process, ongoing process, and it's a journey.
Yeah. I laugh because I think, sometimes I do a lot of workshops with leaders and very often, you share information and insights, and I lay down the truth as just simple as like, it's simply not a magic wand, guys. You literally have to actively be involved. You have to make a decision. When your body doesn't feel like making the decision, you have to kind of override that feeling, kind of go, okay, no, this is the reaction I'm having. I have to think through this and take better action to get a different type of result. But I think one of the things that come to mind when we speak about space, creating space for it and just being in that moment, one of the things, and I had to learn this the hard way and a lot, many years ago, is the concept around radical acceptance. And you kind of go, when you just radically accept it is what it is, and then have the space for that and kind of go, okay, so now it is that. And now what is my next, action I would choose to take, right? Because, as much as we don't want to accept circumstances or outcomes or results that we've had in our lives, especially I'm thinking, imposter syndrome, it's uncomfortable and usually catches us, at our weakest. So it's not like you actively trying to sabotage and go, let me just do that. It's an imposter. It's happening to you. And you have to be able to talk your way through that and kind of figure out what is happening, right? What is this feeling? Why do I feel so scared and fearful about this thing I'm about to do? But I mean, Irina, you made a decision to sell your business due to burnout. What were some of the warning signs, and how do you know, or how do you now support others in recognizing those signs earlier?
I love this question because when I was going through it, I didn't know what burnout looked like. I didn't know that I was burnout until I looked back and I was like, oh, that's what it was. And that's to put the label. We do love to put labels on things. So for me is, as you mentioned, there was no joy in living and doing day to day. It was always a resentment of, oh my God, my phone is ringing. What's going on? Another problem. I don't want to deal with it anymore. It was me having a hard time to fall asleep, or waking up at 2:00 in the morning and just thoughts would not stop, that inner chatters that you cannot shut down. And then you're waking up in the morning and you feel exhausted, like you haven't had a rest. Also, avoidance, numbing out. I was eating very little. I was doing a lot of networking. While it helped me and it grew my business, it was also a lot of alcohol involved. Majority of the events, they are in the evening. A lot of times they're for free. So it was every other night, if not every night, at least a glass or two of wine or something even stronger. So it was all of that combined. at a certain point when my body and my mind said, I do not want to do it anymore. So there was absolutely no joy. I felt like I built a cage, right? Where it's a pretty cage, but it's still a cage. And that's when my body said, that's it. And that's when I work with people and mentor them through their business journey, I help them to realize it early, to make a decision. And you can work smart, not necessarily hard. Nothing wrong with the hustle, but it has to be intentional, because you can hustle for years and not to reach anything. So one of the principles of success is to be aware what you are doing and the purpose behind it and outcome you want, and analyze it. Am I getting where I want to go? Because I'm not going to tell you that building business is easy and it doesn't require work. And at the same time, you can be strategic about it. Where are you putting your energy? And that mentality is that I have to do it all, versus what do I really need to do? What do I must do that will move that needle forward? And what am I choosing to do? So be very, very intentional. And once you receive that, I believe that building business is you building it to have freedom. So, you build in a business, you go into success. For a lot of people, it looks monetary at a certain point of their life. But then if you don't have time to spend the money you're making, there is a problem. If you don't have time to spend with your family, loved ones. And I had a client who reached a certain point of success, and she had to overcome guilt because she's from the family where, hustle culture is normal. And when she stopped working behind the counter, when she in total works 5 to 10 hours a week and still in front of her computer at her own time and leisure, there was a lot of pressure from her mom saying, what do you mean you're not working? There was a lot of shame for not fitting into the cultural box of that's, business owner has to work 24/7. And a lot of people put it as a badge of honor that I work 24/7 and I'm available 24/7. Well, God forbid you text me after 8 p.m. You're probably not going to receive an answer from me unless it's an emergency. And thankfully, we're in a line of work where we don't get that very often.
Yeah, I love that. And, it's as you speak through it, it makes me think that, what we are seeing in the world. And I mean, I've been doing this for some time now. And what I've seen, working with such a vast generational age differences in corporates. And what we're starting to notice is younger generations are just actually kind of going like, you guys, you've all been hustling for so very long, and not all of you are millionaires. So let's be honest. Like it's great. And I love the word you used, like just being intentional about what it is you're doing and putting out there, but really starting to understand that there's been a fundamental hustle belief in business that if you're not hustling to that degree, you're definitely not successful. Or just the idea, the framing of that has been so, and that comes with judgment, and it comes with like, why, what do you mean you're having coffee at 10 o'clock or you're at a coffee? Aren't you supposed to be working? Like there's even that tone that comes with that, yes, I'm having coffee. What's wrong with you? Like, leave me alone. Right. And I think just that I think it's slowly shifting, and with younger generations like you guys, it's starting to show, that there's a different way, there's a better way, there's a way that feels good, there's a way that you can be intentional and find a bit of a medium. And I think, Irina, even if how you were positioning that is the importance of boundaries. Right. But Jen, one of the things that we, that's one of the questions we have here around imposter syndrome is something so many leaders struggle with. And still, I've been doing this for 10 years already. And still today, it's probably one of the top 5 things that people struggle with. And, it's a silent struggle, but a very debilitating one to such a degree. What helped you move through it, and how do you support others facing that imposter syndrome today?
Yeah, I dove into it recently to start doing keynotes about imposter syndrome and realized that it's not something that just women deal with. And it was my partner, my boyfriend, who was like, I deal with that. So I had to get a little smack in the face to recognize it's 90% of the population. Like, it's not just women. It's mostly women, but it's not just women. And honestly, I lived with it the majority of my adult life. I didn't frame that diploma that's right there. That diploma was in a box for 20 years. Like, I didn't feel like I earned it. I didn't feel like it mattered, like it was no big deal. Told myself I just got lucky that I got to play soccer there. And so that's the only reason I got there. And they helped me get through, that I didn't really belong. But the truth is, like, that chatter, that voice, right, that says you're not good enough, you're not smart enough, you're not ready, you don't belong here. What if they find out? Oh, if they find out, they're going to know I don't know anything and I don't belong here. Like, if you stop trying to silence it and instead start trying to listen, like, what is this voice scared of? What is this voice trying to teach me? What part of me is this voice coming from? What part of me that was rejected, that was ridiculed, that was, ostracized or sent out of the group at some point in my life is just trying to protect itself. Because when that imposter syndrome feeling comes up, it's not because you're bad or you're broken or you don't belong. It's usually because you care, because you're about to do something really big that is scary, that's going to challenge you, that's going to force you to grow. And that for me has become like part of the process, is stop long enough to recognize the fear that's attached with the imposter syndrome and recognize, like, is it the fear real? Right? Because there is danger. Danger's real, right? Like, if it's dangerous, like, turn around, walk away, let's get out of here. Or is it fear of perceived rejection, ostracization, all those types of things, which honestly, if you're out there doing what you actually want to do, being who you say you are, saying what you want to say, and really making the difference you desire to make, you are going to be rejected and not accepted and potentially pushed out and not belong in certain areas and certain spaces, because you cannot please everybody. So check in with the voice, find out where the fear is really coming from, the part of you, and talk through that, the reality of that, and recognizing what it is. And the other side of that, so that's one side, right, is stepping into, where's this voice really coming from? What's the fear really about? And is it fact or is it possibility? And can I regulate myself through that anyway? Like, fear for me is a guide. If it's scary, shit, well, that's the next thing to do. Like, let's go. But then there's also, who do you say you are? Because we're big believers, and you actually alluded to this already, that with the action, right? You have to start being before you believe. And that's a big element that a lot of people miss. They think it's about doing and having. And it really is, how can I start being who I say I am, in spite of and alongside of and holding hands with, right? As I become who I really am. And that practice and the courage through that is what got me through. I mean, I public speak now, and I used to be terrified of public speaking. Just like sweaty and like red faced, right? Podcasting, speaking, never going to happen. But I also realized that it was actually a fear of being heard. It was a fear of being seen. It wasn't a fear of speaking. And so practicing, like, courage is a skill, just like communication. You have to practice being uncomfortable, and it gets easier and easier and easier.
As you speak through that, what I take away from that is listening to it, instead of just kind of going, I don't want to go there. It's just kind of sitting with that, kind of, what is it that you're actually scared of, right? And psychology around, well, what is the fear? Like, what is the thing holding you back? And it comes back to being seen, right? Where today I can sit there in vulnerability and just kind of go, being seen scares the living daylights out of me. But today I'm like, I can say it, and I'm like, it doesn't hold me. It doesn't have that grip. But how do we get business owners to create a bit of emotional resilience for themselves and their teams without sacrificing performance or success? Any one of you can go ahead and tell me.
Well, first and foremost, I think to start seeing resilience as a strategy. And resilience is how you perform. And even though you might be in a high pressure, high stressed environment in your business, or it feels like it is, high pressure, high stress doesn't mean low support to yourself, to your team members. So start with yourself, model regulation, and also create systems and processes around it. And how do you check in with yourself and others? Making sure it's not just for a check mark, I kind of ask, but actually mean it. Be truly involved in the process. Okay, guys, we're going through this intense period of time. What's going on? How are we feeling? Let's debrief. Let's discuss. So create that cadence of checking in with yourself, with others. Also create a system for recovery. So being able to recognize what it is and what you need to fill back your cup, so to speak. And also realizing that performance actually going to get higher when people feel safe, physiologically, ecologically safe. Because when people feel safe, they feel safe to be seen, as you just mentioned, because that's for a lot of people is a fear of being seen. And therefore, they will make better decisions. They will take risk in a healthy way, and they will stay in the company longer. So all of that play a role in long-term success for your business. So taking a breath, checking in with people, reflecting, creating the culture, normalizing resilience and emotional literacy.
I love that. And I think that what stands out about that, Irina, is that I don't think everyone sees it as an actual strategy. Like people kind of go, well, we got to get this done. We got to make it happen, guys. Like just pull yourself towards yourself. But when you kind of looking at emotional resilience and kind of going, well, what does the team need, and what do I need, and what does my team need, and what does that look like, and how do we use this as an actual strategy to performance and success? And I think the framing of that people just don't do.
I love to add one more thing to help with that, because I used to be a very number-driven person. In a business, I love metrics, I love numbers, all of that. And that's how we measure success, right? With what gets measured, gets done, and the bottom line, that matters. That's what a lot of people in business for. But think about it this way. Behind every single number is a human being that drives that number. And behind every single human being is behavior that drives that number. And behind every behavior is emotional state, how the person feels. And so being able to regulate emotional state, it requires awareness, and in a high pressure situation, it requires resilience. So are you treating the symptom, which is the number, or are you treating the root cause? It's putting people in a proper state of mind in the first place, so they can perform at their highest and best.
Yeah. And that just breaks it down into like really understanding why it's something, sometimes we're not succeeding to where we need to, purely based on the fact that there are people behind the numbers that you're chasing. So how about looking at your people, and then once you started looking at the emotional state and really understanding what the root cause is? Because and it's strange. I recently spoke to a leader who's been recognized as one of the top coaches in the world. And part of that question is like, why do we still get it wrong? Why, like in leadership capacities, in businesses, why are we still getting it wrong to that degree? And I think, Irina, that's exactly the point. We miss that behind the number is a human, and behind that human is an emotional state. Okay, so guys, for the last question, and please feel free just to jump in where you can. If a business owner is listening today and thinking, that's me, I'm exhausted and I'm losing myself in this process, what is the advice that you'd want to give them? And what do you want people to know about today's conversation? What would you leave them with?
I want to say it's because I feel like I've even had to do this recently, is to get honest with what you're tolerating. Get honest with what you're tolerating and at what cost. Like, how much of your peace and your joy is it costing? Like, Irina and I are both very much aligned with our joy and our peace being priority. So ask yourself, like, what are you tolerating, and for what purpose are you tolerating it? Right? How can you start to approach it from a different lens, right? Awareness is not just understanding your patterns, it's understanding your perspectives. And what, like you said, you brought up biases. You would say biases, we would say belief systems, and they're similar, right? Or constructs that we build around how and the way we're supposed to do things. Start dismantling those things. Start questioning things. Like, who said it had to be that way? Who said we have to do it that way this many times at this rate? Like, is there a better way? Right? So just get more curious is what I want to say.
I also was going to say about being honest with yourself, and I will add to it, give yourself a pause. Allow yourself to pause and check in and see what's going on. And if you figure out what are you tolerating, ask yourself if you're willing to change, because you have to. Change will never happen if it comes from outside. You have to decide for yourself. And that's why we used to say our slogan for the company was choice, change, action. You have to make a choice to change, to take action. So slow down, give yourself a pause to see what you are tolerating, and then ask yourself, are you willing to change? And if you are, what is the first step forward? And it doesn't have to be anything extreme. It's a one shift that you can do as soon as possible that gets you on that better path.
I love that. Yeah, absolutely. And it's, it's it's a simple strategy to kind of think back to, like the choice, change, and action. So what is the choice? What are you going to change? And what's the action, associated? I love that. Please, thank you. That was such a fantastic conversation. I love the insights. I love that you have this wonderful structure, the CARES approach. And they work with high stress professional first responders and leaders teams to build the kind of emotional resilience and presence that can withstand real world pressure. From the Academy of Motive Action, guys, if you want to find out more, it's with Irina Alexander and Jen Hardy. Where can we get hold of you? What's the quickest way to get hold of you if people want to reach out?
Our website, motiveaction.academy, is the simplest way. We have also a link in our footer to all of our social media, so as well as email and phone number. But overall, motiveaction.academy. Click on the website and connect with us.
Fantastic. I love that. Motiveaction.academy, guys, and the links will be in the description box below. Irina, Jen, thank you for your time. Thank you for just chatting and spending some time with me. And thank you for breaking it down into such practical kind of ways to consider. Have a fantastic week. And we'll chat soon. Thank you so much.